Welcome back for Wednesday's session on Chapter 9 of Tiger Tiger. Today we're going to be thinking a bit about the setting of the story. Now, we know that the story is set in Rome. It's set in the palace, in the Emperor's palace in Rome. Okay, it does go to other places such as the Colosseum and elsewhere, but largely it's set inside the palace. Specifically at the start of Chapter 9, the setting is this wine cellar. And that's what we're going to be thinking about in today's lesson. Just to get you started, whilst we're thinking about the setting of the wine cellar, I would like you just to imagine that you are in this wine cellar. Have a think about what would it be like to be in this wine cellar? What would you be able to see around you? What would it feel like to be in the wine cellar? Just spend a few moments just thinking to yourself, or if you've got someone with you, an adult perhaps, just try and have a chat with them. What is it like inside a wine cellar? What do you think a wine cellar underneath the Emperor's palace in Rome? What might that be like as a place? Now you've had a chance to have a think about this setting, I'm going to give you some of my ideas about what I think this wine cellar might be like. Now I expect that this will be a very, very dark room. Bear in mind that it's underground, there'll be no natural light, there'll be no windows. I think this would be pitch black. Possibly, I can imagine in my head there being some candles or some lanterns to give the room some light. I think it'd be quite cold under there. I know that to keep wine for a long time, the best conditions to keep the wine are probably not freezing cold conditions, but certainly quite cool conditions. I think it'd be cooler underground than it would be above ground, certainly. I think that's probably why they put the wine underground. I imagine that there'd be lots and lots of wine. I don't think we're talking about a few bottles. I think we're talking about many, many hundreds of jars of wine. I put a picture up of some, I believe these are Roman jars of wine, some very well preserved jars. I think there's going to be loads of these. I think this room's going to be full of those. I think it's going to be a massive room. I think it's going to be very, very large, possibly sort of maze-like. I think it could be one of these rooms where you've got different corners to turn. You could probably get yourself lost in there. There's probably so many jars of wine, possibly different types. I think it'd be quite a spooky sort of place to be in. Not sure if I'd want to be there by myself. Very dark, cool, large. I think it might be a bit spooky to be left alone in a wine cellar underneath the Emperor's palace. I think it'd be very, very quiet as well, silent. I can just sort of hear, as I'm imagining it, I can hear perhaps possibly a dripping sound, maybe a little bit of a murky sort of drip in the corner of the room. That might be the only thing I can hear. I don't think I'd be able to hear anything that's going on in the outside world. Those are just a few of my thoughts. I wonder what you came up with. I bet you came up with some really, really interesting ideas about what the wine cellar was like as well. Now would be a really good time to read through the extract of Tiger Tiger. It's really important that we keep reading this extract every single day because every time we read it, I feel that we understand more about what's going on. Certainly, when I read through it, each time I seem to pick up something which I haven't necessarily picked up before. So, have a read of this extract and just try and pick out anything you can do that describes the setting. If there's any words to do with the setting that you're not sure about, try and find that out. Perhaps use an adult to help you figure out exactly what's going on and what this place would look like. Today we're going to be doing some inference around our extract of Tiger Tiger. Now, just to explain what inference means, it might be worth comparing it to what we did yesterday. So yesterday we did some retrieval questions. That meant that we searched the text and we found some answers to questions. And the answers that you gave would have been right or wrong. You could read you could find the exact information in the text. Now, inference is very, very different to that. What you have to be when you're doing inference is you have to be a bit of a detective. You're looking for clues. Now, that means that there could be more than one answer. There certainly will be more than one answer to the question that we're doing today. It doesn't mean that you can't do an inference answer badly. It just means that there is more than one way of answering the question. And as long as you explain your ideas well, then that means you could give yourself a really, really good answer. So inference is about reading between the lines. It's about looking for clues. It's about forming an answer, forming an idea, and trying to explain why you think that particular thing. And we're going to look at a question in just a second. So today's inference question is, why do you think the author chose the wine cellar as the setting for Boots' escape? Okay, so this is going to give you a chance, this question, to generate your own reason. Why do you think the author has chosen the wine cellar as the setting for Boots' escape? We're all writers as well as readers, okay? In class, we all write our own stories, we do it together, and you try and make the story that you're writing as enjoyable, as interesting to read as possible for the person that you know is going to read that story. Now, I'm going to give you just a few moments to think of all the places that the author Lynn Reed Banks could have chosen for the setting for Boots' escape. Why has she chosen the wine cellar? Why might the wine cellar be an interesting place from which Boots could escape? Why would that make it enjoyable to read? Have a bit of a think. Pause the video there. I wonder what ideas you've come up with about why the author has chosen the wine cellar as the setting for Boots' escape. Well, here are my ideas. The first reason why the author might have chosen the wine cellar, I believe, if I'm thinking about it, is that it's quite a funny sort of setting. I think it adds a lot of humour into the book. I think it's a funny idea that this tiger has been left in the wine cellar with all these jars of wine. Perhaps those of you who've got cats at home could sort of imagine your own cat if they were given if there was a jar of wine within their reach, they might just playfully try knocking it over, and if the contents spilled out, they might try to lap up that wine. I don't think that would have a very good effect on your cats at home. Um, it's quite a funny idea, the idea of this tiger drinking this wine and having a strange effect on him, and perhaps changing his behaviour slightly. A second reason why the author might have chosen the wine cellar is it because it creates some tension. I feel a little bit uneasy. The thought of this wild cat inside this wine cellar amongst all these jars of wine. I feel a bit concerned as the reader for Boots. It talks about how this jar shattered into shards, and I don't like this idea that Boots might end up hurting one of his paws or harming himself in this room. So this setting creates quite a lot of tension for me as a reader. It makes me feel a bit worried for Boots. So I wonder if that's why the author Lynn Reed Banks chose the wine cellar, because it makes me feel more tense than if it had been a different room of the palace, perhaps. A final reason I thought is how must this setting have affected Boots? Surely he must be feeling very, very confused in this room. It's probably very, very different to where he's normally kept. He's normally with his keeper Julius, or he's with Princess Aurelia. He's probably not left alone by himself in a room ever. So I think he'd be feeling really, really confused in this situation. He's got a small amount of freedom to sort of explore this room, and as we can see quite quickly, that goes a bit wrong for him. But perhaps that might also make him more keen to escape, because if he was in some comfortable room of the palace and he saw an open door, perhaps he wouldn't go for that escape, that bid for freedom. But because he's put in this really confusing room where it's dark and cold, when he sees his opportunity to escape, perhaps that's one of the reasons why he just goes for it, because he's been left in such a strange place. What I'd just like you to do is just try and think about one of those reasons, or perhaps a reason of your own. Why has the author chosen the wine cellar as a setting for Boots' escape? Now it's time to record your answer to this question, and I've just tried to give you a little bit of support with your answer. I think it would be good to try and do what's called a point, evidence, explain answer. This means that to start with, your first sentence should be making your point. What is your reason? Why has the author chosen the wine cellar as the setting? Try and answer that question quite directly, and you can use the sentence starter I've given. Just finish off that sentence. In the evidence part, you need to find a quote from the text. That means copying some words directly from the text. So if you believe that the wine cellar has been chosen because it's funny, try and find a particular phrase or sentence that you find quite funny. And then in your explanation at the end, in your explain part, what makes that quote funny? So you obviously will have chosen a quote that either makes you feel that you think is funny, makes you feel tense, perhaps shows that the tiger is confused. Just explain that in a sentence or two. What makes that quote funny? What makes you feel tense? And if you can do those three things, you should have an inference answer, an answer which just shows your thinking about why, of all places that the author could have chosen for Boots' escape, why she chose it to be a wine cellar. Now, there is no right or wrong answer for this. It could be any one of those three reasons. It could have been a different reason. It could have been something you've come up with by yourself that I haven't thought of. But I'd love to just sort of see a bit of your thinking, and if you could try and structure it in sort of 3 points: point, evidence, explain. You could be onto a really good answer. So I'd like you to now get on with writing that answer to this question. I wonder how you got on with that task. I'm sure that lots of you will have some really, really good answers that you've generated for that question, some great inference. I'm sure a number of you will have also found that very, very challenging, that question, and I can understand that. Doing inference questions is something that we need to keep practicing. It's not an easy skill to do, but it's something we must try and get better at. And just want to say well done for taking part in today's lesson. Tomorrow we're going to be doing something slightly different. We're going to be thinking about the smells that there are in this extract, because that's a big theme of this extract. So please join me again for tomorrow for the next session on Tiger Tiger.